if you run across something that sounds like it should have evidence backing it up, take a beat, and it's worth saying like, hey, what is the evidence here? Look it up, ask the person making the claim. I mean, it doesn't always make you everybody's best friend.
That happens, yes.
But it's worth questioning what you think is going on, because once you start doing that, I think a lot of interesting stuff starts to pop up.
Canine Detection Collaborative. We bring the conversation straight to you. Training tips and helpful hints you'll actually use. Real insights from real experts with a side of laughs. Canine Detection Collaborative is where it's at. It all comes down to just one thing, helping our dogs be the best they can be. Canine Detection Collaborative.
Hi, everybody. It's Robin Grubel, and we're going to pick up the conversation with Dr. Lindsay Waldrop that we started last time. So it's Stacy and I and Dr. Waldrop, and we're having another wide-ranging discussion about all sorts of odor movement and everything. So stay tuned and enjoy this particular conversation.
In terms of the most interesting fluid flow, it's always, I'm really kind of weirdly obsessed with internal, like interior type fluid flows. Right now, the large environmental stuff that you guys might see out in doing wilderness work is, I mean, I think it's interesting. It's just less interesting for me than what happens when you're in a situation like my office space and I've got this dump, the HVAC, air conditioning dumped straight down on me. So I'm getting cold because I'm cold. And I can feel it there, but it's so light that if you have something like a nosework oil, that vapor coming off, it's going to sink, but it's going to sink so slowly that it might not even matter as much as the HVAC currents that are going through this room. And very little ability to understand that without some kind of visualization or working the dog, right? Because the dog is your sensor. And I think this is where those videos are coming in, because my dog will do something weird.
Right.
Because I always set my hides wherever, and then I work the dog, and then I do the visualization afterwards. So it's usually pretty consistent. That's the other thing. It's pretty consistent flow in here, and I can control more of it. Exterior, I can't control what the wind and the sun are doing.
Right.
But yeah, and they've been so surprising to me too. And I've worked these hides, like these are hides that I've been working for years in my own house. And just, I haven't started thinking really hard about what the dog might be sensing until very recently. And doing this visualization has been really interesting, because when you start doing the visualization, the dog's behavior starts to make much more sense. Especially that my favorite one has been we have this little it's a beer keg, sort of mini fridge. And it's right under mini split system, because our house is like super old, it's been built in the 40s. And so we don't have central air.
Yeah.
So we put this little mini split in, and it tends to draw air up and just spews it out into the middle of the room. I have been doing visualizations with that thing on and off. And I thought it was mostly the air conditioning, but actually it's mostly the mini fridge, the heating elements in the back of the mini fridge that are driving that air. And it doesn't always even get all the way out into the room. Yeah. Eventually it will, because it rises up enough, but it's not doing what I thought it was doing.
Right.
Usually when I send my dogs out in that, and it's a really small little area, they will go into the center of the room. They'll pick it up probably as really diffuse and then run over to the mini fridge chickens. Because they know, like at this point, they know like, oh, if I smell this,
it's probably over there.
It's probably over there, because they've struggled with it so hard in the past. So that's the learning thing.
Right.
But when we get into, like, I'll come to Chapman, and I have another woman here who does nose work, Dana Deeser, and she and I will practice, and they are just befuddled by the HVAC currents. They're just so befuddled by them, and it takes them a long time. And I think there's a lot of stories that are told by like, especially when you're setting hides. And if you're trying to do a visualization and you're doing it with hot smoke, it's probably not going in anywhere that's relevant to what the odor is doing. But I think there's a lot of stories being told too. You'll ask people like, what's the odor going to do? And you say, oh, well, it's going to pool, right? It's going to slow and pooling, except like the HVAC currents are taking it off into like the corner or whatever. It just taking it off into the corner somewhere. And the dog is reacting. And the thing that I worry about this, and I've seen it happen when I've trained with people before, is that because it's so different than what the expectation is, they think the dog is off task.
Right.
And the dog is 100% doing their job.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of people either pull their dogs off of odor or even punish that as being fully, and it's pretty clear to me that at least some of those times, it's going to be because that's where the odor actually is. The dog's working appropriately, then you're telling the dog no.
Right.
And so I worry about that in terms of doing visualizations and telling those stories, because that gives such mixed signals to the dog that I think it's problematic. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing some of these videos, just to raise awareness of the fact of it really might not be doing what you think it's doing.
Then there's the whole aspect of, if we think about our HVAC in our houses, right? It's so different than when we go to like office buildings or buildings like that, or universities. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when we have nosework trials, we'll have nosework trials in universities or that sort of, or school setting with that sort of HVAC, which is so different than the HVAC that we all tend to be able to train on.
Right.
And to the point that I actually want to create a t-shirt, although I don't think they let me wear this in competition. I really don't. That says HVAC blows. Which I think is perfect.
It's really,
it's tough.
It's tough. Really tough because the currents that HVAC are producing are intentionally so slow that you don't want to be blown. Like, right. Yeah. You don't want to sit in a room where you're having stuff blow on you. That's unpleasant.
Right.
And so the HVAC currents are designed so that you can't feel them, which makes figuring out where they're taking odor impossible.
Yeah.
Without
and
a visualization.
If the dog is used to one kind of HVAC,
mm-hmm.
right.
And then they periodically get to go into another kind of HVAC.
Right.
Where the setup is totally different, because in our houses, most of us don't have air that blows straight down from the ceiling.
Right. Right.
So then we go to a trial and the hide is on a table and hey, there's a vent right above it.
Right. Right.
And now we have these odor pools all along the edges. And I get people that ask me, how do I train for that? And it becomes this really difficult way of me trying to like, well, if we can build on this skill, we can build on that skill, that kind of thing.
Right.
And aside from having access to buildings like that, it's really difficult to kind of get your dog kind of used to that kind of airflow.
Right. I totally agree. We're struggling with the same thing too of, I just recently missed one hide out of 10 on an NW2 and I was frustrated with it, although the dog did great. Like she loves it. So she didn't give half a crap about like not getting the hide. It was just me who was disappointed. But it was at an air museum out here.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Super fun place. My favorite plane.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah. So we were there. We were like, I was also very distracted because my favorite airplane is SR-71 and they have one there. It was so cool.
Yeah.
Those are such bonkers in terms of the engineering. So we got everything we had missed previously on our first attempt, one of the vehicle hides. So we'd been working cars really hard. They had 2 vehicle searches, which almost never happens. The 3 hide was a vehicle search. We nailed them all. I was like, this is so amazing. We're doing so great. We get to interiors, which I never worry about because this dog is so great on interiors.
Yeah.
And we miss and we time out. We get one and we time out on the other. And she was giving me signals of hindsight being what it was. My guess was it was on the underside of a table. It was kind of tucked back. She was giving me a lot of information about, they had these flight simulators that she was searching.
Oh yeah.
And I think what happened was that there was an exterior door and I think that there was some airflow getting pulled to that, but it was so slow that it was getting really mixed up. She couldn't really tell. She was like, man, there's something here, but I don't know. Just looked back at me like, sure what to do. Yeah, so But yeah, it was really frustrating because it was like this weird air situation of this one huge room. And we never practice in one huge room with like really weird airflow.
Yeah.
So how do you, I don't know, like go there practice? I don't know. Every once in a while, somebody will run some kind of sniff and go there. And so I'm like, well, I guess we should do more of like museum stuff.
Good luck getting in, right? I mean, it's hard finding good places to train.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure that we also get to talk about if you're cool with talking about the breed and skull shape and
yeah, I can talk
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like that I'm really, really curious about. Like, can you tell us a little bit about like what that research was about? Kind of maybe some of the takeaways from that. I don't know. Is it published yet? Is it?
Some of it is, some of it's not. I'm happy to talk about it though.
Okay.
I had a postdoc, Nick Hebden, who a wonderful person, but he moved on to another postdoc. So the publishing, we kind of have some like good results on the morphology, but they haven't gotten out. One of the goals for this summer is to get some backlog manuscripts out for peer review. But we do have some of it published. It was a paper in Science Advances. And we were really interested in backing up into the main question of the grant. One of the big questions, I think, is like what kind of dogs to pick for operational work. Is there a big benefit to having a dog with like a longer muzzle, or can you do detection work with any breed? Is it more the training? Is it genetics? All of this stuff. So our basic question was, these dogs we have manipulated through selective breeding dogs to have the greatest morphology of any single species that's probably ever existed. They're incredibly diverse in their morphology, and the morphology is just the shape of their features, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're thinking about the shape of the skull, that's one of the things that's most variable in a dog across the breeds. Just the extremeness of that pushed in face, brachycephalic braids, stuff like that. Or even dogs with really extreme morphologies like bull terriers, which mostly is soft along that. It's not, that's not a lot of skull there that creates that ridge. But it's a big question, right? Like if you are relying on airflow going through this nasal passage, getting to these, we call them turbinates, these little scroll works that have the tissue that actually interface with air in order to sense the odor molecules that are in that air, surely that has some kind of effect, right, on the performance of them doing these tasks. We have a little evidence that suggests that it may be more complicated than that. Nathan Hall did do a paper a number of years ago that had a natural sniffing task of, I think he had traffic cones with some food under one of them, and had 3 different breeds sort of go the task to try to figure out which cone had the food under it. German Shepherds, Pugs, and Greyhounds. And the dog that did it in the less time and did it most successfully was what? What do you guess?
I think I know the answer, so I'm going to just not guess. Because I've heard this.
Heard this before.
Yeah. So I've got to keep my mouth shut on this one because I don't want to be a spoil.
Is it the Greyhound, the German Shepherd, or the Pug?
The Pug.
It was the Pug. The German Shepherds were a little bit slower, and the Greyhounds couldn't be bothered.
Right. Because it wasn't running.
Participate. Yeah. Couldn't be bothered to participate in the task.
Right.
So they didn't get a high enough sample size from the Greyhounds to really
and the German Shepherds were probably like, well, what's over there? Do I need to worry about what's over there?
Worry.
Yeah.
They're such funny creatures. But yeah, it's clearly more complicated than just the shape of their skull. But like, hey, let's look into the biomechanics of the shape of the skull and see what happens. So what we had done was so there had been previous work doing this modeling by Brent Craven, and he has some like really foundational papers in this where he used, I think it was COMSOL, although I'm not 100% sure, to take like really high resolution MRI scans and CT scans to get the 3-dimensional void space of that thing and to run it through this computational software, which again took 124 CPUs running for a full month. Well, nonstop to do a simulation of, I believe, 1 sniff of a dog. So, I mean, this was,
wow.
They ran a little bit slower back in when he was doing this But I don't think that it's a very, very tough thing to model. It takes a huge amount of computational effort and work effort to get these scans to be what we call like watertight. Just the modeling up the structures is very, very work intensive. So it's not practical for us to do this on a larger scale level so that we can answer these questions, like 90 or 100 of these simulations, right? To go through to really answer these questions. So what we did was we contacted museums along in the country and requested that they send us their preserved skulls. So these are skulls that have been stripped of all the soft tissue, and it's just the museum prep of the skull, which, does shed off some of it's not perfect in terms of the tissue getting that void space exactly right, because there's going to be these really fine layers of tissue and things like that. But in terms of at scale, the resolution that we needed, you need to blast it with so much radiation that you would kill a dog if you try to do it live. So that's micro CT scanning is very lots of high powered X-rays to go get that resolution. So this was a good sort of, we don't have access to cadaver skulls to do this. Certainly not 120, 130 of them. So we're going to do it through museum specimens. And we got a huge number of them, about 120, 25 to do micro CT scans. And so the Navy funded that project, which was amazing. So now we have like the largest collection of micro CT scan domestic dog skulls in the world, which is pretty cool. And most of those, by the way, if you'd like to do things like 3D print a skull from this collection, you can go to MorphoSource, which has all of the STL scans just available for free. So we've put it up as part of our public service. All of this information is for free. So go into MorphoSource and you'll be able to find some of these dog skulls that we've scanned and download them if you want to like have a 3D printer and print it out. But then we did a pretty classic morphology landmarking study where we just said, okay, there's certain points that are fixed landmarks. They're the confluence of like 3 different features, and they're always present. No matter what the skull is shaped like, those things are always present because they're just like some anatomical feature that's important, right? So we did this study, and you can put it through a process which basically breaks down all of the variation in the movements of these points into what we call principal components. So if you want to capture most of the variation, you would grab this and just pull it up or push it down or something like that. And what we found was, and then we were able to go back through these breeds and say, okay, well, this breed historically had some kind of scent task related to it because it's a hunting breed or a tracking down breed or something like this. This had some kind of bite work component to it as our sort of other control of, it's a guardian breed, or it's bred for personal protection or police work or something like that. Or it had none of those, right? So we were able to score these. We ran back and we're also able to do basically estimations based on lever calculations and the volume of this area of face and see if there's any differences. Like, are we selecting for these tasks that show up in the morphology of these skulls? And the answer was no, not at all. Not for bite work, not for scent work. A dog is a dog. It has a dog-shaped head. Even the more extreme things, if you have more extreme morphologies, some of those have scent work in the background, some of them don't. Some of them have biting, some of them don't. There's no good reliable thing that says this is the morphology feature that is driving sort of a scent work-based profile or a scent work-based thing in the breed. So we published that in Science Advances, which is really interesting. We got a little bit of pushback from it, but it's not just the size. There's a Labrador has the same capacity to bite as a Malinois. They have about the same skull size. They have about the same lever force, essentially. But you don't see a lot of Labradors doing bite work,
right?
Like patrol work or sport IPG or whatever. And it's mostly because of behavior and genetics, right? So there's that big component that obviously, if you look at a bunch of dead skulls, you're not going to pick up. So I thought it was really, really interesting because we are very good at selectively breeding, obviously to drive change in the shape, but not necessarily to drive performance, which I think was a really interesting takeaway from that study. So we do seem to be really good at if there's some measurable thing that we can easily measure, like how fast your dog is. Well, you can just put a bunch of dogs and make them run and you can see how fast one is, right? That's really easy. And so we get things like whippets and greyhounds that are actually faster, right? They're morphologically much faster than the other dogs because we have this very easy way of evaluating that, right? For scent tasks, it's so complicated.
Right. It is.
That, you can have a pug do great because it likes the game and a Malinois not give a crap and it doesn't do well, right?
Right.
So one of our takeaways was there's a lot more things. It's probably a lot more personality behavior that does this. And you could probably get a French bulldog to work operationally if it could breathe, which is not necessarily the case. Like, there's other problems there, but it's not necessarily the shape of that dog's head. And so what we wanted to do was go back with a model and say, okay, well, we know this about the morphology, but let's see about odor deposition. And right now we're running models where it's very much simplified. So we take that structure and we're able to, through the manipulation of those points or those principal components, get like theoretical morphospace of those skulls and say, well, here's where the actual dogs lay, but we could also do like extreme morphologies over here and, make their nose really long or make it really smushed in, stuff like that. And our simple model doesn't worry about the scroll work exactly. It simplifies it into a porous media, like almost a sponge. So the deposition can take place during the sponge and we can look more at the broad shape of those structures instead. That porous media modeling is very well worked out math. It's very fast. And so we could do these things in like maybe a day running on the computer instead of a month, which makes it possible to do like 90 or 100 simulations to get odor deposition down, to get that information, enough different simulations that we can start telling us about how this morphology is actually impacting odor deposition rather than trying to do 90 of the exact simulations. One of the things about modeling that you learn very quickly is that you can model everything exactly, precisely, but it's more important about all models are wrong.
Right.
Some models are valuable.
Just ask the weather guys.
Right.
Yeah, right.
All models are wrong. Some models are valuable. So it's the way that you say, okay, well, that detail is probably not important. This detail is. This is the fundamental feature, and we're going to leave this other stuff out because it's adding time or complexity or expense, computational expense, but it's not actually giving us any of the information that we need. We looked back through those scroll features and we said, across all these models, are we seeing differences in like, are they more dense? Are they more fine? The answer is no.
Okay.
Dogs have scrolls and it really doesn't matter what kind of dog it is. It's going to have approximately the same distance, so the same portal for that air to go through. If you're a fox, you have a much denser with smaller features than things like wolves and dogs do. But in terms of wolves and dogs, they all have, if I took a slice, I wouldn't be able to necessarily tell you what kind of dog or if it was a dog or a wolf, because they're all essentially morphologically the same. So that was another thing that says, okay, well, we can use this like sponge to model this because there's not a lot of difference happening once you get to that level. It's mostly into the gross shape of that skull. So, so we're still running models for that. I don't have answers, but in terms of the external morphology, in terms of the internal morphology, there's not a lot of difference between the dogs in terms of the things that we think really, really matter for that. So interesting.
Yeah. So then it comes down to genetics and behavior.
Yep. So if you're thinking, I've heard, well, people, Malinois do this better, or German Shepherds scent work better, Bloodhounds scent work better. They do not. They do not. Even we had Deborah Bird, who has worked with us a little bit on this project, but she looked at not only a lot of the morphology as well in some of these breeds, but also the genetic components, the genetic basis of the number of olfactory receptor elements and things like this across breeds like their famed bloodhounds and other things and pugs and all of this stuff. And she found no difference there either. In fact, Yep. So wolves do tend to have a higher number of genes that encode for these odor receptors, but dogs or crossbreeds do not. So there's not a genetic basis in terms of higher performance, and there's probably not a morphological basis. It's probably almost all behavior and training. So in terms of scent.
Because we still hear a lot oh my gosh, this breed is the best, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Based because they've done it forever or whatever.
Right.
Now we can say, no.
Well, you could definitely say it's not a morphological or it's not a physical feature that they have.
It's training.
Right. For sure. So, I mean, if you wanted to get out there with French Bulldog and you have a French Bulldog who just wanted to hunt and that's all it wanted to do, and it had a long enough nose that it couldn't overheat doing the job.
Right.
Then I sure do it. Like, it's fine. But I think there are a lot of stories told about a lot of stuff in dogs.
Oh, in fact, give us some more of those. What your top 2 or 3 stories?
Oh, God, top 2 or 3 stories. There's tons of stories about bloodhounds being especially good at scent tasks, and the literature and what we understand about the differences of those dogs, like the ears doing
Flapping?
and the flues and slapping.
Right. The skin and all that.
I'm telling you, that makes the biomechanist in me just curls my lips to hear that. Like, I don't think that there's any sort of anything that people just like big flappy ears, and that's fine. They aren't doing anything. They're cute. Love that for them. But are they like gathering scent for the dog? I don't know, because there's nothing on this. That's never been a tested thing. It is just a story. But in terms of my understanding of fluid flow and how animals interact with it, I would be shocked.
So then you have to kind of think about it. Is it genetic motivation, though?
Right. So there's a lot of genetic behavior. Oh, absolutely. So if I've said genetics, I really specifically mean like the physical parts of their body. So like, anatomy that they have and the sensory structures and things that they have. Those aren't special in terms of dogs. They're just a weird shaped dog. That's all.
Cute.
But in terms of the software that they run, there's obviously a strong genetic component there.
Yeah.
That's probably really different. Like, will those dogs just like continue to follow a trail? Yeah. But that doesn't mean that if you didn't install that software on like Australian Shepherd, they wouldn't do exactly the same thing, and they're just as capable of it, right?
Wow.
So that's one. The bloodhound ear flu thing is, I mean, it's a cute story, and I'm not going to be obnoxious about it, but there's like no basis for that. I've never seen anybody test it. It just doesn't strike me as something that's likely to be happening. That a specific breed is better or not, I think that there's lots of arguments that people have about like, oh, you should use this breed because it's clearly better at it. It has a better nose. I don't think that there's a lot of, not talking about the behavior, there's probably a lot of, in terms like, there's obviously a difference, right? Again, obviously you don't use Labradors as patrol dogs.
For reasons, right?
For reasons, because that's not a part of their typical genetic picture. Now, have I seen a Labrador do IPG? Yeah. Like some of them probably can, but it doesn't mean they can't. It's just not, it's like if you pick a random Labrador off the street, you're probably not going to want to like put money that's going to be a good patrol dog.
Right.
Versus a random Malinois off the street. It's probably going to make a better patrol dog, all things given equal, because they want to solve 100% of their problems with their mouth. So in a way that's ouchy, like that's a big thing. And I just saw this on Facebook, and I don't dive into comment sections on Facebook very often, but it was something that struck me as this early scent initiation. I can't remember, ESI protocol.
ENS.
Oh,
yeah.
They do some stuff.
Early neurological.
No, there's ENS and then there's ESI where you every day before, like after day 3 or something,
right?
You expose the puppies to a new odor.
Okay.
just to gauge their reaction.
Okay. I saw that somebody had said on Facebook, and I don't want to call anybody out and I don't want to be obnoxious about it, but I think it's just the general idea of it's good to at least be aware that sometimes these are stories that are being told and not stuff that's backed up with evidence, is that it increases the number of odor receptors in the dog's nose to go through this protocol. And I'm like, is there evidence for that? Because that seems like first of all, a very testable thing.
Right.
And second of all, a very specific claim to make. And I was like literally sitting in the Troubadour, like in some music venue, like on my phone, trying to like look at papers and figure this out. So I can't say I've done an extensive literature search on this, but I didn't find anything that made that claim. I saw like one review paper based on somebody's research who's, I guess, an AKC judge or something like that, which is great. I mean, it's great to review paper, but I only saw one study actually looking at like, does this improve performance of dogs that go on operationally? And it was like 4 dogs. So I just like some of these things that people say, I think it's probably good to catch a beat with it and be like, hey, is this like, what is the evidence behind this? I mean, is it hurting the puppies? No, it's not like you're doing any harm with it. But I also think that if you want to make a claim, an evidence, like a scientific or evidence-based claim, you need to back that up with, I've done the science and I know that it's hard and I know that it's expensive. Nobody knows that better than I do. But at the same time, if you want to say that, you have to have evidence to back it up. And it's not even, there's a distinction. We talk a long time about science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine. They're 2 separate things. They're related, but separate. Science-based goes on what you understand about how the body works and what's probably likely to work and stuff like that. You just don't throw like random crap at the wall. But evidence-based is really different. You take that, you evaluate it, and you say, does this protocol have evidence to back it up? That's evidence-based, right? So you can be science-based, but not evidence-based. The sort of fluid flow visualization stuff I do, I would say that's science-based, but not evidence-based. I don't have any evidence. I haven't evaluated this through science to say this is exactly what the odor is doing, or it's probably what the odor is doing. It's just my expertise based on, experimental fluid flow, having a PhD and stuff like that. And it's probably pretty close, but can I publish on that? No.
Right.
I get probably ripped apart pretty good in peer review trying to say this is exactly what it's doing, but it's probably qualitatively pretty close.
Well, and that comes your evidence-based versus science-based, right? I was listening to another podcast yesterday while mowing the yard, and they were talking about all of the early neurological stuff that you do with puppies, which we have been told forever makes very well socialized puppies who are resistant to stress. Mm-hmm. And even the person who came up with that and included it, and we'll include a link to that podcast in the show notes, talks about how the way that original study was done was in German Shepherd litters that were whelped in a kennel. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, my puppies are picked up 2 to 3 times a day. Anyway, they're in my basement.
And they're Labradors.
And so does that really apply?
Right.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, there's no way to test everything.
Right.
Yep. So acting on your best information is all you can do. And I don't think that it's a bad, especially if it's not doing any harm.
Right.
In terms of like, we really worry about that with medicine, that interventions have side effects. And so they have the potential to do quite a lot of harm. I think one of the things that the pandemic showed us was ivermectin for COVID. That wasn't a neutral thing. It didn't help because it doesn't help, but it also does harm. It's not a lot. It doesn't kill you immediately, but people who get those treatments for COVID, ivermectin, like they do worse on average than people who get nothing or whatever the standard of care is. So it's important when you have some kind of intervention, that you're not doing worse. And do I think like that, even like the smells in the puppy, like, do I think that's making the dog worse? Yeah, probably not. It's probably fine, right? But I do think that, and you can't evaluate everything because there's just not enough science funding to do it all. So you have to do on your best judgment. I think it's just worth taking a beat. If you're saying this is what's happening, well, do you have evidence that that's what's happening? That's what you think is happening. That's fine to say, this is what I think is happening.
Right.
But it's a really different thing to say, this is what's causing this. Like when you do this protocol, you're increasing the number of receptors in that puppy's sinus. I don't think there's any evidence at all for that. Like whether it not it's a good idea, there's not even very much evidence for that either. So, because I think one study in poor dog, and again, I didn't do a really super extensive literature search, but this was what I could pull up on my phone while I was waiting for Joey Santori to start his talk about plants at the Troubadour. So there's not very much evidence, but it is worth saying like, hey, this is what I think is going to happen.
Right.
And it's sort of acknowledging the limitations that you have with that too, because I think it really quickly gets into the situation of this is what I think is happening. And then it turns into this is what is happening. And then I come along and be like, is that true? And everybody's like, do your research. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. Okay. I hate to be the pot stirrer with it, but a lot of times I am.
Give us one more myth about odor and scent that you would like, that you think are a little myth busting.
Oh, okay. I saw something recently where you should be training, this sport specific, that you should be using different essential oils to train different things. And that's probably totally untrue. They probably act all very much the same.
Oh, you mean like that it was surfaced that the essential oils behave differently? Is that?
Yes, correct. Yeah. I have almost no indication that the oils, they're mostly terpenes. I like low key passed this by Lauren and she's like, where are these people getting this information? I don't know where that is. I really don't think that there's any. Now, are our noses different? I think that where that might be coming from, again, it's not evidence, but I think where that might be coming from is that I think that people have different sensitivities to those oils.
Right.
So I think they might be picking it up differently or reacting to it differently. Like I am really sensitive to clove. Like if there is a really strong mixture of all three of the NACSW scents, all I smell is clove. To the detriment of like, I don't really like the way clove smells. Like I like the way birch smells, but if there's clove in there, that's all I smell. And when I walk into a search area, I can smell if there's clove a lot of time. In the AKC, I will say, because they use so much odor. That if I work into a search area and there is clove, I will be able to pick it up.
Yeah.
And know that there is clove in that area. I think that might be where it's coming from. But in terms of the physical properties of it, there's nothing that gives me an indication that they would be behaving any differently than any essential oil. And like I say, we don't have NACSW, the folks have talked about funding a headspace analysis little study. Lauren's talked about this kind of for a number of years now, and I don't know where that is because it would be Lauren's stuff. She's the analytical chemist, certainly not me. I'm for chemistry.
No, you just do physics. It's okay.
I'm fluid flow only. Like the chemistry is, I don't know. I get a lot of C's in chemistry. I'm glad that I work with Lauren because I don't have to do the chemistry. She's the chemist, genius chemist. So
opposite for me in undergrad. Like I enrolled as a physics major and then pulled out and ended up as a chemical engineering major. And I was like way happier for that. Physical chemistry almost killed me on the quantum side. Like the ideal gases, I'm like, yeah, I can get that. I can get behind all that. That's chemical engineering. I'm like the quantum stuff. I'm like, you're all of a sudden, I can't cope.
Well, the fluid flow people are they're not any sort of quantum stuff. They're like, we see CCC.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't,
exactly.
I'm too dumb for anything that I can't see and understand. This is like, I have a lower limit of biology too. I can like down to tissue, I'm fine, but any lower than that is too esoteric for me. Like,
I'm a social scientist. I'm good. It's like,
it's just, it's good we have specialization. So I don't have to do things like chemistry or microbiology. Somebody else can do that for them. And I love that for them. Love that for them.
Oh, wow. But I'm really glad to hear you like talk about the whole, because that whole thing, I keep getting like, well, anise is so much harder and all this. And I'm like, if your dog can't find anise, there's a training issue.
Yeah.
It's not a chemistry issue.
No, it's not a chemistry issue. I'm as certain as I can be without actually going through and looking at, the diffusion coefficient and vapor pressure and all of this stuff. But in terms of what we understand about the structure, there's just nothing to lead me to believe that it would be any more likely to get out into the air. The vapor pressure is not going to be different. The diffusion coefficient is about the same. In fact, I wish there was more variability in diffusion coefficient. It would make my job a little bit more interesting, but there's really not. Like, it's all kind of within the same 10 times order of magnitude for a lot of different stuff. Ammonium nitrate, like ammonia, is a really interesting one because it's like 1,000 times higher.
Wow.
Which is super cool. So there is some like visible differences there, but everything else is pretty similar in terms of vapor pressure. So yeah, so I guess that's the last one that I would definitely say I've run across recently, and there's just nothing that I would know to support it. I mean, like, do I like anise? Probably not. I mean, like, just the smell of it. I love training with birch because I really like the smell of birch.
Here I am. I can't really even smell the difference between birch and clove. Like,
really?
sit
That's
there and
interesting.
I smell the tins, and I'm like, is that birch or is that clove? Like, am I putting it in the right bag? Like, I'm sitting here going, is there any kind of mint with this one, or is this clove? I have to color code things. Only one that is really obviously different to me is the anise.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, birch, they all smell really, really different to me. Clove is so overpowering that I can't get over how overpowering it is. And I really like the smell of birch. Like, I used to love this tea berry gum as a kid, and it's basically just birch. Like, I really, really like it.
And anise is like liquid. So it's like,
yeah, and anise is just like, it smells only weird, sort of licoricey, sort of oily to me for some reason. And I have the most difficulty smelling that one. So if I have any cross contamination, I keep all my odors separate, and then I have like a combo box. And so if I ever put something out and I'm like, oh damn, what is that? It just goes in the combo box or it goes in the trash. So, but yeah, I was trying to figure out some kind of system for this, and I was training with Pete Stevens down in San Diego. And I was like, oh, how do you keep all these separate? And he was like, I smell them. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
We actually have a color coding system.
Yeah.
You've got sticker dots. My intern from Cobleskill last year, because this is how her brain works. She's literally like, pink is clove, lavender is anise, and teal or light green is birch. And that's how everything's color coded, which it actually makes it super fabulous and easy.
That's cool.
So yeah.
Nice little stickers.
That's good. Little stickers are good. Although I hang out so much with the drug and the explosive folks, and they're so weird about using extra stuff.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I talked to Andy Wyman he was in Oregon when I was doing this Oregon thing, and he knows so much, but he told me a funny story about training his first drug dog, and he had marked all the hot ones with Sharpie. And so he sent the dog out, and the dog found all the Sharpies in a desk because he had trained a Sharpie finding dog because he had marked the things. So they get really weird about proofing off stuff. And so I'm always in the back of my mind, how do I proof that off? But I'm like, I don't have to. I don't have to do that.
And I will tell you, the whole conversation that you were talking about plastics.
Yeah.
Products or for explosives, right? I mean, Dash, he could find command strips everywhere.
Wow.
And which is
nice.
The plastics in it, right?
Yeah. But also, everybody who's in scent work should be extremely aware that 3D prints stink.
Yes.
They have a really intense odor profile. So do not only use the little, I think the Sniffy print thing is super cute. And I'm not saying don't use those, but make sure that you're hiding them not in those too. Right. Because I could really easily see the odor picture for a dog is being the oil and also that that plastic from the 3D print too. So just be careful with it.
I actually avoid those personally. I stick with metal tins, or I may use, I actually use mostly metal tins, or I may use straws or whatever, and I try to vary that, but I try not to do any one thing,
Yeah,
and
any one thing.
When I start a dog on odor, like I don't even like to use painted tins.
Mm. I mean, I use Q-tips, but I also put my essential oils on other stuff. I have like fabric.
I don't do that because I'm like,
well, you don't need to, right?
You don't have to because the dogs are never going to find anything that's not on a Q-tip.
Not on a Q-tip. So yeah, it's really interesting. I've been more, and human remains, I started to say to the scent work people who may want to fast forward through human remains, that is the most complex chemistry problem.
Yes.
I mean, if you think like all of the different things that cause decomposition, different bacteria, amounts of moisture, like heated, not heated, the different tissue types, like the buried or not buried, the submerged or not submerged, and somehow dogs can figure out it's and all of like raccoons, deer, and all of the things, they can still figure out that it's a person. And that's so wild. And it's such an interesting training problem.
400 VOCs for HR, I think.
Over that.
Yeah. I mean, like I just did
because I know living is like 1,800 VOCs for living, which was fascinating.
It's crazy nuts.
It's really nuts.
It is nuts.
Yeah.
They do it from the literature. They tend to do it in groups, like type groups of VOCs too, because like the actual chemicals coming off are just so, they're so variable and so different.
And if the victim was on drugs and if they weren't, like,
right. It's crazy that the dogs can learn to generalize, and it's a crazy training problem. So nosework folks, all you have to do is put oil on a Q-tip and worry about the fluid flow and the situation, which is very hard too, but it could be worse. So
storage is a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that we typically do at the end of each session, because dude, we've been chit-chatting for a long time and I have a feeling we could keep going. So you're going to have to back.
Yeah, no, I love to sit and talk about these different things. I'm like making little notes on different studies that I could even run.
And don't
that are a good idea.
Open invitation.
That would be great too.
We have 4 camps going on this summer. So we have distraction camp that's literally like in a week and a half. When this episode airs, we'll be in the middle of distraction camp.
Nice.
And then we have 2 intentional handling and hide settings in July and an HRD specific one in September. That's a private training.
Okay. So, that's cool. That's cool.
You're welcome to come for any or all graduate students in drones and whatever.
Yeah. I will have to, I'll have to think about this. I mean, so the interesting thing about where I'm at is we don't have a graduate program here.
Oh.
So most of the science I do, I just do myself, or I have undergrads who help me.
Bring them too.
Yeah. So but I have lots of undergrads who are really interested in helping out with some of this stuff. I also have like a lot of backlog stuff that I need help getting through too. So, but this has been really fun. Lots of ideas. I love chit-chatting with folks who are super knowledgeable about dogs and training and all sorts of stuff. Like, it's just interesting.
Yay. Okay. The thing that I took away was the scientific versus evidentiary is just because we say it's that way, is it really that way?
Yeah. Just if you run across something that sounds like it should have evidence backing it up, take a beat, and it's worth saying like, hey, what is the evidence here? Look it up. Ask the person making the claim. I mean, it doesn't always make you everybody's best friend.
That happens. Yes.
But it's worth questioning what you think is going on, because once you start doing that, I think a lot of interesting stuff starts to pop up.
Yes.
So my takeaway for this, and I'm still going to noodle on this for quite some time, is since I have 1 foot in the sport world and I've got nosework dogs, and I've got 1 foot in the working dog world, and I've got, I have search and rescue dogs, and the whole conversation about sniffing volume is I want to think about and start to noodle around how I can use some of what you've talked about to improve my nosework dog sniffing volume. So I just have to kind of think about this.
Yeah. I've also thought a lot about this. I think I don't know how to train odor availability, and I'm also not very careful with residual and spreading it around and stuff like this. So I think that the nosework folks probably could learn a lot from sort of the way to thinking about handling aids and availability of odor and how to get those sniff volumes bigger. But then you've also got to, like, there's lots of the study that we had was about 20 like W2 and W3 dogs. Like, they were highly trained, they were highly successful. And do they need it? Do they need a bigger sniff volume when they seem to be doing really well with what they have? So that's really interesting too. So
it just has me curious. So
it is really interesting. I do wonder if that's more of a training thing and how we would tease apart that versus, and it would probably be a starting thing. Like, you would have to follow dogs from being put on odor individually, or maybe some of this really early puppy stuff. Maybe they develop their novel sense. Maybe it's not the neurons they're developing. Maybe it's the big breath. Maybe they're learning to take bigger breaths when they're little if they're put on odor really soon. I don't know.
Maybe
that's
they have a
testable
stronger
thing.
Diaphragm. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe that's it as well. I mean, there's lots of different hypotheses you can come up with, but that's not where it stops, right? Like, you just, and that's the thing that I like to push people towards is, like, those are all great explanations, but we shouldn't stop there. We should, those are testable things that we can go do, as opposed to, well, it's increasing the number of neurons. It's like, well, when you say something like that, it's shutting that line of questioning down rather than opening it up. And so I'd really like to think of people trying to open up, like, why do dogs do things the way they do? So, yeah.
Awesome.
Good ideas.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our chat.
Absolutely amazing.
I always like sitting down and chatting with people who like dogs, because dogs are awesome. And they're awesome because they're fun. I don't have my dog here today. Usually one of them is here, but I have to go clean up my seawater system, so they can't be around. I do that. But they're cool to live around. They're cool our connection with them as a species is super awesome. And scientifically, they're very fascinating too, with how they experience the world. Clearly very different than we do. So that mismatch between us being very visual creatures and them being very olfactory creatures is always something that I think about. Well, how do we bridge that through training and communication and stuff like that? So, so interesting.
Okay.
Very cool.
Awesome, everybody. Thank you for listening in. Go train.
Canine Detection Collaborative.